Hi there, my name is Matthew Brick. I'm a Valor Christian High School student, brother of four. I'm a wrestler, and I'm out to find interesting stories to talk to about, make connections, and hopefully point people to God. Let's get this, the Brick House Podcast.
This is Brick's home. This is your house. Presenting the Brick House Podcast. The Brick House. Here comes the boom.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Brick House Podcast. Today is a great day. It's a Monday. It's sunny outside. No clouds in the sky whatsoever. Great day. I'm here with a great person, Ken Allen. He oversees Youth for Christ here in Denver, Colorado. He's been part of youth ministries for over 30 years. And more importantly, he's a husband. He's a father. He has an absolute love for God. He cherishes the people in his community, and he's out really just trying to spread the gospel and help youth specifically. How are you doing?
Matthew, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
It's great to meet you.
Yeah, so just how's things been for you?
Man, things are going well. We're excited. My wife, Carrie, and I, we moved out to Denver, over 30 years ago for youth ministry, as you mentioned, and thanks for the introduction. And right now, things are going really well. We're getting ready to open up a youth center up in Aurora. And so it is exciting to have a safe place for kids to meet. And I'm just excited about what God's doing in our community, and especially through the lives of teenagers. I've been serving in youth ministry, as you mentioned, for 30 years. And I just love teenagers. I think that teenagers bring an authenticity to life that is really, it's awesome for me to see. So I love what I'm getting a chance to do right now.
Oh, sweet. That's sweet. What do you think that started that love for being involved with the youth? What were you like as a teenager, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, it's a long time ago, Matthew. But for me, it actually is part of my story. It's a really important part of my story. I grew up in St. Louis, and my family, we would go to church, but I never really understood the gospel. I didn't understand where Jesus fit in. I always had believed in God, but I didn't understand where Christ fit in. So it wasn't until I went to college, so I was 18, 19 years old, my sophomore year in college, that I heard the gospel for the first time, and it was through Campus Crusade for Christ, which is now Cru. And I realized at that moment, I said yes to Jesus, I accepted, I was like, man, this makes so much sense. But at that moment, that really kind of put a call on me, wishing that I would have been reached earlier in middle school and high school and understood more of who God was and who Jesus was and the saving grace. It's just in grace alone that Jesus was God's son, and he came here to live amongst us and forgive me of my sins. And so that really propelled me then to want to come back and serve teenagers, because I wish I would have been reached earlier in my own life.
Yeah, I recently got baptized, and I'm really it's even something that I'm considering of doing, maybe interning at my church when I'm out of high school, but that is great. So tell us a little bit, Youth for Christ, what is your mission? I mean, obviously helping with youth, but what do you put in place to help the people? And maybe explain that for us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Youth for Christ has been around for a long time. So in Denver, we're celebrating 70 years of ministry, but even before that, nationally, we started over 75 years ago. And our first full-time employee is maybe somebody you've heard of, and maybe some of your listeners. His name was Billy Graham. He was the first Youth for Christ employee, and he did rallies and Youth for Christ just did these large rallies and youth gatherings to share the gospel in those contexts. And what I love about Youth for Christ now, and what we're about, is we go to where kids are, whether it's a high school campus, we work in juvenile detention centers, we work with teen parents in city neighborhoods, and we reach kids that just wouldn't walk into a church, and we build relationships with them. And how we do that is really investing in reminding them that they are seen, and teenagers are loved and heard, and walking alongside them and really getting a chance to build relationship before we share the gospel with them. We want to build a relationship, hear their story, connect our story with their story, and then bring God's story into it, which is the ultimate and greatest story ever told.
Oh, yep, I agree. And how do you go about that? Like, do you guys have people out? Like, so I know of some people, or my family, they would kind of do some Colorado Uplift. I've heard of urban youth ministries, things like that, and like how they like work with the students or people, or the students, and that they like after school, or they even come into the schools. It's almost like an elective. How do you go about that? Like, how is it structured?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matthew. We have a lot of different things. With the high school and middle school campuses, we'll have breakfast or have a lunch that we will provide, because food always brings teenagers. Everyone listening, I'm sure you're hungry as you're listening to us right now, so grab a snack. But food brings a lot of kids out. So that's what we do on the high school and middle school campuses, is have a lunch or a breakfast. And then we'll invite them to club, and we'll build relationships. We'll go to their sporting events. We'll go and just see their activities, their performances. And then we also are on juvenile detention centers. So we lead Bible studies and Sunday services and mentoring on those juvenile detention centers. In the neighborhood, we have mentoring that happens inside in our community, in the neighborhood. And that's the other part with the ACO House, our new youth center. It's going to be a place where we can invite people to come to. So we want to go to where they are, but we're able to go into the context where a lot of kids are.
Yeah, what do you think is maybe some of the biggest struggles right now for teens, maybe that are in the city, or maybe even just the kids that, like me? I'd say I've had a pretty good life, but what do you think is like the hardest thing that's keeping kids from Christ?
Yeah.
If you could go down that rabbit hole.
Sure, I'll go down that rabbit hole. I think loneliness, I think anxiety, I think these iPhones that we all have and all these things that we think we're connected with social media, where that's not real connection. God designed us to be in relationship with one another in person. Doing things on the phone, social media, I think that distracts and takes away from real relationship. And so I think that we're more connected as a society than ever before, but it's all through the devices that we have. And we're not connecting in real relationships with one another. So I think that's one of the things is loneliness, anxiety, and that's something that Satan uses a lot. He takes loneliness and twists it. You know, he says in Genesis, when he created, everything was good up to the point where he said it's not good for man to be alone. And at that moment, he realized, I need to provide another helper, Eve, for Adam, because it's not good for us to be alone. God knows that, because he is in relationship as the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. They are all in relationship with one another. And when we don't have those real relationships, I just see that there's a brokenness and an opportunity for people, especially kids, to struggle. We need to understand that we are in this together, and we learn from one another, we encourage one another, the body of Christ being the body of Christ. And real relationship takes more face-to-face and real connection with what's going on in our lives.
Yeah, I think and what I took away from that is just like the importance of community, and how much that is, like how important that is for the development of a person, youth or non-youth.
Yeah.
But yeah. Tell us a little bit about this youth center.
Yeah.
Like, what is that exactly trying to do? Is that trying to like keep, protect the kids that are in the city? Like, what is the...
Yeah, Matthew, that's a great question. The youth center is located in Aurora in the 80010 zip code, and it has been the most violent zip code in the Denver area for the last 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of gang activity up there. There's just a lot of gun violence and just violence in general. And so we realized there was a couple of shootings in 2022 in that neighborhood with teen-on-teen violence that took place. And then shortly after that, there was a teenager that walks into an elementary school down in Texas and kills elementary school kids, and that could have been one of our kids here in Denver. But at that moment, we realized we wanted to provide a safe place for kids because they needed that in this particular community. They weren't. They're not. It's a pretty underserved population. Not a lot of activities or just places where kids can go and be safe, and that's what we wanted to provide for them. A place after school when kids are most vulnerable is right after school or a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night when they can get in trouble. And so we want to provide fun and activities, healthy activities, and also just place for them to just be a kid, because a lot of them have really wrestled with that and in just the life circumstances that they have. So that's part of what's so exciting about this youth center for us, is that we really feel called that God has asked us to provide that for teenagers up in Aurora.
Has there ever been, have you made a connection or a relationship with one of the people with people that you've worked with Youth for Christ?
Have I made connections with
students or?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And would you say that they've positively impacted you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that one of the things also that I am and I appreciate you even doing these podcasts, because it's a chance to learn from one another. And I learned so much from students that we work with and teenagers, and hearing their stories, which I didn't come from that type of story, a broken home. I grew up in a home with two loving parents. I knew what love was, but there is so many kids out here that just are coming from broken homes, or being raised by a grandparent, or being raised by a single mom. They don't have the support that I grew up with. So just to learn that context and understand where kids come from, I've learned a lot from them. They've taught me, and I think taught me just even more about how God's grace and God's goodness and kindness is so much what we all need. We need that.
And I feel like as teenagers, and I think teenagers are going to be listening in, but if we were to see something like that, we were to see a friend struggling, or maybe having it a little less off of what we have, we might have it a little bit better off than them. What advice would you give to a student that sees someone else going through something hard? How should that friend be there for their friend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the schools are so big right now, and there's so many kids that are really struggling with this loneliness. And I just know, even walking through high school campuses or middle school campuses, I'll startle kids by saying good morning to them because they're down on their phones looking, or they just don't feel noticed. And one of the things that the enemy, I think, has said is, you don't matter. And even if you're not here, it doesn't matter. And so what I would encourage teenagers that are listening to this is, okay, who in the lunchroom is sitting by themselves? Who in a hallway is just sitting by themselves and doesn't really, is trying not to be noticed, or is really struggling? Just go up and say hello to them, and just say, hey, how are you doing? Even someone that's maybe not a friend. I guess I would encourage, let's step out of even our friend group and maybe try to keep an eye on just the everyday kid that we don't necessarily know, maybe not part of our friend group, but as we're walking the halls, what can we do just to even engage someone that we don't know, or somebody that we know, or is in a class but we just realize they're maybe struggling? How can we be proactive in just asking good questions? When I think of Jesus and his encounters in his ministry, he asked people a lot of great questions. So my encouragement for teenagers is, ask people questions like, just more than how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I see that you don't have anybody to sit with at lunch to. May I sit here? Why are you sitting alone? Is there anything I could, just what's going on? I think there's just other questions that we can ask, and that truly it gives you a chance to care for someone that maybe just needs to be listened to. They haven't been heard, and they're lonely because of that. So connected, real connected, like looking people in the eye as you're talking to them, saying, hey, I see you, and you matter to God. And that's kind of what we do at Youth for Christ, is we want to see teenagers for who they are. We see you, we hear you, and you matter. You matter because God designed you. We're all made in God's image. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we forget, is that we are all God's creation, and we need to encourage one another in that and remind one another of that we all matter.
Yeah, have compassion for one another.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I testify that. I feel like I found a little good group of friends that really look out for me. But I know that, like, well, some person came up to me yesterday. I was at church and I was praising. I was up in the front. Like, that's what I'm all about. I'm up in the front. But not everyone is like that. And so I'm walking back. The service is over, and this parent, their mom, comes up to me. And they're like, do you do the youth? Do you go to the youth group? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, and then she introduced me to her son, and it just so happens he's a sophomore, and I'm a sophomore. And I introduced myself, and he's like, well, and then his mom's just like, I really wanted to say, like, it's nice that you were talking to my son. And then they left, and they were like, we'll see you Wednesday. I hope that, well, I don't know, we'll find out. But I really hope that this podcast, I hope the people that are listening, that you can come to me, you can come to someone, just reach out. You're not alone. Yeah. That was like a touching moment for me. That's that's really cool. Like my church right now is having us pray for, like, because they showed us a video of, like, this one person. It might be different because, like you said, not everyone grows up in a church and not everyone will be willing to step into church. But our pastor, Sean Johnson, was like, they showed a clip of this guy who said that if this guy didn't bug this one guy for years on end to come into church, like, this person had the willingness to keep tapping or maybe annoyingly say, hey, you want to come out to church? Or you even want to, and it could be for someone else, it could be something else. It doesn't necessarily have to be bringing someone to church. But what I'm really trying to bring this full circle is that reach out, and you can, you could be the person that brings someone to Jesus, because you might be the only person that someone sees Jesus through you, because not everyone else might be that way or act that way. And in that video, it was that guy it was his testimony, and he was saying that how much change had been brought to his life because this one man invited him to church. And so I say, and so bringing this back full circle is, like, you can pray to maybe be that person. You can pray to use God or have God use you to bring someone closer to God, make that relationship, love on someone, hear them out.
Amen.
Amen.
That's what it is. I mean, let God use you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm praying. I won't be here for Easter, I don't think, but that's what this is all about. And, like, kind of going back, like, because the Youth for Christ has been around for some time now. Like, the testimonies, I'm sure you've heard a lot of testimonies, but, like, how have you seen? Like, have you seen some broken people, places, things? And, like, how have you seen them grow now? Like, now that maybe some of them are adults and now they're having children, like, how have you seen that, the impact generationally?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it and we've experienced it. We have people now that we've worked with that are now moms and dads, and they have said the impact of a YFC, especially as a teenager, the importance of just having someone that would share the gospel, that would care for them, that would show compassion, that would show empathy, that walks alongside them. Now they're giving back. What I see is people that we've ministered to, they're now giving back as they continue to serve in their churches, continue to serve in ministry, and just giving back to the community. And that's what it should be. It should be a full circle thing. For our mission, you asked about our mission. Our mission with Youth for Christ is to raise up lifelong followers of Jesus, not just checking a box saying, yeah, I accepted Jesus, now I'm into heaven. Lifelong followers means lifelong disciples, people that are going to follow Jesus no matter what, through ups and downs and everything else in between life. That is what we are really called to do as ministers of the gospel with Youth for Christ, is to raise up lifelong followers of Jesus that will be faithful to Jesus and continue to give back and serve those that they want to reach with the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Another question, like, how would you say for, like, maybe both boys or girls, but, like, maybe in high school, I'm sure you've seen a lot of it, but what would you say for, like, an abundance, like a fruitful relationship, maybe dating or something of that sort? Or, like, just, like, even the starting steps, like, even, like, becoming one's friend, and then, like, what, through your experience, what do you think is, like, something for people to have a good relationship?
Yeah, I think praying certainly first about if you're going to go into a dating relationship, asking God to really help you to find the right person to be dating, and just to be intentional with dating as you're giving and just navigating a dating relationship. Really asking God to give you the eyes and ears to really treat that person well, and also just navigating what a relationship looks like. What does God ask me to do in this relationship? A dating relationship can be tricky in high school. It really can. I mean, I know from my own experience. And so it's something that if that is the desire of your heart, just to know what you're going into and making sure that you understand with dating the pitfalls that can come alongside of it as well. People do like to date, and that's important. I mean, it's fun. It's part of being a teenager, right?
Yeah.
But there are boundaries that you don't want to cross with that young person that you're caring for. And again, seeing them for who they are. They're a daughter or a son of God that you want to treat them with the respect and the dignity that God's asked us to do.
You a big sports person?
I am. I love sports.
You played sports in high school?
I did. I played football and basketball.
Football and basketball. Does Youth for Christ do any sorts of like sports or coaching or any of that stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. We, our friends at Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA, they really are very much sports focused, and that's great because that's how they work with coaches. When we go on campus, we're not just sports. We're trying to reach all different kids from every different background and whatever their activities are. We do have staff. We have for example, Donnie McCleary is our campus life director at Rock Canyon High School, and he helps coach the wrestling team.
I know.
You know Donnie?
Or I don't know him, but I know exactly. Why when you said that, because I wrestle.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Donnie. Yes.
He doesn't know me, but
he will. Sure he would. So Matthew, but we have some staff that will coach. Coach on high school and middle school campuses, and they're part of our staff. For example, Justin's out at Sagewood and Ponderosa. He's helped coach the baseball team out at Pondo in the past. He's not doing it currently, but he has in the past. So
we were wrestling Rock Canyon, and I see that they have like a Bible verse on the back of their wrestling gear, and it was I was like, so I know of him. I didn't know his name or nothing, but I was like, that's I don't, because I didn't think you'd see that in a typical school. Yeah. And Valerie, they don't have Fellowship of Christian Athletes because it's a Christian school. So I didn't know what that was until just a little while ago. But I think sports. I think that it teaches you. I was saying this. I was talking to my grandpa just yesterday or something like that, but I think sports, like, it teaches, I think all sports, any sport, really teaches you a lesson of, like, well, depending if it's, like, solo sport or a team sport, but I think it teaches you about the greatness of triumphs and the lessons from loss, but you can learn from both, but I think sports really is
it's a good life lesson for sure.
Yeah, a good life lesson.
Yeah, there's great lessons, and I would say for us, as Youth for Christ, and especially with our mentoring, we're coaching in a different place. It's not necessarily a sport, but it's coaching life. It's coming alongside and mentoring young people that maybe didn't have a dad in their life or maybe didn't have a healthy adult relationship. Part of that is just to model that and to show what healthy relationship looks like. And so, I think that's where we as adults can give back to teenagers. And we were once teenagers, even though it was a long time ago, Matthew. I mean, and for those teenagers listening, it was a long time ago. Hey, I'm 55 years old, but I do remember the struggles. Remember the struggles. I know the struggles that you all are going through as teenagers. I just want to encourage you. You're not alone. And what you're experiencing isn't necessarily unique. It's unique to you, and it's unique to your story, and that's important. But sometimes we forget that we think that we're the only ones going through that or the other ones that have. And that's another thing that Satan kind of uses as kind of an attack of us, is to remember that we are going through these changes. There's different seasons of life. And as teenagers, we're experiencing, it can be a hard stage. I've heard people, like, I remember when I was a teenager, people would say, well, this is the best time of your life. And I'm like, boy, it sure doesn't feel like it. And looking back, I wouldn't say that was the best time of my life, was being a teenager. I struggled quite a bit with anxiety and loneliness, and even being on the football team, being on the basketball team, trying to find my way, navigating life is hard. It's hard as a teenager. So it wasn't necessarily the best time of my life. And I can honestly say to teenagers right now, what you all are experiencing right now, I think it's harder. I think what teenagers go through right now is harder than when I grew up. I just think there's so many different things that are happening, and more just isolation and loneliness and things that just make it harder to grow up.
I have a question. If you were, what was your dream when you were a high school student? Like if we went back to
what was my dream?
Yeah, senior Ken. What was
Senior Ken? Senior Ken. He was going to go into architecture, study architecture. That lasted about a year and a half in college before I switched my major. And then it was actually to be president of the United States.
Really?
I wanted to get into politics. But that's not what God had in store. And I'm grateful that it's not, because looking at what we got now, I'm glad I'm not in that world. But really, when I came to know Jesus my sophomore year of college, things kind of shifted a little bit. I became what God gave me when I accepted Jesus was it wasn't necessarily the fear of hell, or I wanted to go to heaven, but I was just wrestling internally. And what God gave me when I accepted Jesus was a peace. And it says in God's word, a peace that surpasses all understanding. And I received that when I accepted Christ. And I guess that's my prayer for the teenagers, for everybody that's listening to this podcast. I pray that God gives you peace that surpasses all understanding as you navigate life, that He says He will never leave or forsake us. He will be with us. And that's such a gift that I don't think we really fully comprehend. But God is going to be with us in all seasons. And that's where we as believers, that's where there should be a passion for us to bring non-believers into this, because I cannot imagine going through life not knowing God and not knowing Jesus. That's chaos to me. That's hell on earth, truly. So having God with us in all of it it provides peace.
Mm-hmm. What would you say for like maybe a person who's had a bad church experience, or like they've had bad history with the church, or just like religion? Some people get turned off so quick from religion because some people feel like it limits them. It doesn't allow them to have fun. Some of them think that it's cruel. Like how could there be a God that allows bad things to happen, even though that technically we're all not really good people, in the sense we're all sinners. We're all in a sin-filled, broken world. So subjectively, we can say we're good, but we're not,
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I heard, I don't know who quoted this, so it's not my quote, but it's from church experiences that are not great. Hurt people. So we all are hurt, and we hurt others because we're not perfect. And so that phrase again, hurt people, unfortunately. And religion is not what Jesus asks us to do. He asks us to be in relationship with Him. Now, with that said, He also said, I'm going to build my church. And so that is the vehicle for us to draw closer to one another. He also says, do not forget to meet with one another. It says it in His Word. So if you've been hurt in a church experience, my encouragement for you is go to another church and try to find another space. We all, people in churches are messy. People are not perfect, and there can be hurt. I would say just don't give up on trying another opportunity to draw closer in your own faith and your own walk, and finding a community of people that will care for you. That's what the church is about. It's not about, hey, cleaning up, get cleaned up and come on in. Once you get cleaned up, then you can come in. No, it's come as you are. Come as you are, bring your mess, and we'll all bring mess together, but we're going to navigate this walk with Jesus in relationship with one another and to Him. I think I want to encourage, teens. I get that sometimes it can feel restrictive, but I think there's a lot of freedom. It can feel that way right now, but there's tremendous freedom in when you find people in your own age or older or younger that can encourage you in your faith. We are stronger together than we are by ourselves. And so if you're feeling like, well, I can just keep watching a service on a podcast or on a TV, that's not real church. I mean, yes, you can get the message, but you have to be sitting next to people. You have to be in relationship with one another, and as you're navigating that. So, I mean, you would have never had, you watched it on church this weekend, you wouldn't have had that woman come up to you and encourage you. And that was a highlight yesterday for you. Yeah. So that's the opportunity we have when we miss those opportunities if we're not there physically.
And I can tell you, I testify this, the people that know me and have seen me in church, my favorite time. You know, you don't need that place, you don't need a special moment, you don't need anything but worship. And I would say, I would even encourage, this is what I've been lately doing, worshiping by myself. It's one thing that, like, I think once I've gotten to where I'm at, you know, it's actually easier to worship with people than alone. So that's what I've been doing. I've been worshiping alone, like just being, like I don't need someone else to be there with me to worship God. And I've been wanting to work on my relationship and just worshiping God by myself. But man, it's fun. You find people that have good energy. Find a good, worship. It's fun.
It is, and it's a lot different than watching it on TV. You're not. I'll just say that you walk into a room with a worship band and music being played. It is much better live than it can ever be on a TV. Mm-hmm. I can testify to that.
Yeah, you know, I was last I went to one Christian conference. I went to Promise Keepers. I think it was in like 2020, maybe 2021. I don't know. Forget, but we went down to Texas. Promise Keepers is like a men Christian conference, and we were down at the AT&T stadium for the Cowboys. And you know, I wish that I could go back now, because when I was little, like, this is how I want to leave my impression. Like, you know, when I was little, I would like to go back now than I did then, because then I had an understanding of God, but I was kind of almost embarrassed of my faith, or like, you know, for what I had, I wasn't really willing to share of it because I was kind of nervous. I was not I cared what people think too much, and now I'm realizing that I don't care what people think. I do, but like when it comes to Jesus and just raising my hands and having a good time and praising, I don't care. But it was an experience, and but yeah. Like, what you were saying, you were doing you've been to many conferences, like.
Yeah. So early on when we moved out here, my wife and I, we moved out here, we did some conferences called DCLA, and it was not a very creative name, but it was 20,000 kids in Washington, D.C., and 8,000 kids in Los Angeles, and we did 5 days of evangelism training kids on how to share their faith. And we had concerts, we had Christian bands, we had Christian speakers from all around the country, so big, you know, just an amazing lineup of artists and music, and then the training. So that got people there, and they got them excited. The cool thing that I think, and this is just why we're built for community, was one of the things that would happen is we would invite people to accept Jesus. You know, we would share the gospel clearly on the first night, and there'd be hundreds of kids that would come forward, you know, the first night. And this was an evangelism training conference, so we just didn't assume that everyone knew who Jesus was. Mm-hmm. So we shared that. But the other part that was really important is that the kids that were there, they realized they weren't alone. Mm-hmm. And so when they made a commitment of saying yes to Jesus, or, gosh, I think I want to go into full-time ministry, it carried more weight because they were in a room with 20,000 people.
Wow.
And that's kind of what Promise Keepers, that's why that was, you know, we're keeping promises as men. Those things, you know, they matter. They're kind of like putting stakes in the ground, saying this is a pivotal moment in my own life, and I'm going to follow through with this commitment. But it just reminds kids that, wow, there's this many other Christians around the country. I'm not alone on my campus, or, you know, just I'm not alone in trying to wrestle with my own faith. So that's encouraging too, is that they see all of that, and they're in a room with that many other Christians that are praising and worshiping God and having fun, and they're going, wow, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I don't know. If I were to see, before I really got into just, because I feel like I agree with you, like even me unknowingly at a time, but there was, and I'm still kind of walking through it, but like the hardships that I've faced unknowingly, I don't know how I would have gone through it if at least I didn't even somewhat experience God, or like I can testify the way that at least other people treated me because they had their stronger faith. They had stronger faith than I did at that time, and the way that they treated me and the way that they hung or they waited around. They were like, you might not feel it, Matthew, right now. You might not believe in all this, or you kind of believe in it, but it's hard to see it right now. Their faith and probably their prayer is what got me to where I am right now. They were like, I'm going to stick around. I'm not going to leave you. Sure, right now you're going through a hard time, but I'm going to keep praying for you, Matthew. I'm gonna be there for you. And well, I came around. I came through.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. I have a question. And I've been throughout the podcast and just talking to you. I was wondering how I'd phrase this, but how do you communicate? I just can't imagine. But you said you guys do some stuff with juvenile students and things like that. How do you tell people about God when they're in that situation sometimes?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matthew. That is about the lowest point that somebody can be in, is being incarcerated. I mean, in your life, you want to talk about hard times. So they're very open to hearing the gospel. Now, some can be, some of the kids can be angry and they can be sad. They can be very disappointed, but they have a lot of time to think about what's important. When you find yourself in a cell, and know that you can't walk out and don't have the freedom to be able to do whatever you want, and especially as a teenager, they have a lot of time to think, and they're thinking about what's important. So God provides opportunities for real conversations with them. A lot of them know that they've done wrong. A lot of them really feel shame, and they feel like they're being written off by our society and by their peers, by other people, because they've made a mistake. And they're at a pretty low point. And so it does give us an opportunity to really say, hey, we care about you, and we love you. We're going to be here. We're going to walk alongside you. But there are open doors because of that, because of the situation they find themselves in. And I guess for teenagers, maybe you haven't hit that low point, but that's pretty drastic. I'm just saying that we all are going to have tough times in our life. I mean, the book of James talks about, there's going to be trials, and when there's trials, rejoice, because we have a faith in who God is. But it's not if trials are going to come; it's when they come. It's when they come. They're going to come. So if you haven't experienced it, you haven't experienced what Matthew just described in his own life, or for me, or for a young person that's sitting in a jail cell, or maybe a teen parent, a young lady that finds herself pregnant, those things. Those things are also markers in their life, and so it's also an opportunity for us to speak truth and love to those young people that find themselves there.
Man, wow! I mean, like I said, I didn't know how you were gonna answer that, but it's great. It's great. Well, I guess this is I asked this, and this is what I've been asking the last few episodes, but. If you could end it off on anything, and you had to, I know you've said a lot of direct things to the audience, but if there was anything else that you'd want to say, what would you say?
I would say to the teenagers, and thank you, Matthew, for the platform, I'd say you matter, and you matter to God, and you have a unique ability. There's nobody else like you. And my encouragement for you is to where are the strengths? Where are the things that you do well, that you bring to the table, that you can give to other people in your life, and those that maybe you don't know? And how do you serve? How do you shepherd? I think a stronger word, we always talk about servant leadership. Here's what I'd end with: shepherd leadership. Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I lay down my life. And with a shepherd, it's caring for a flock. It's caring for people. It's walking alongside people. It's being willing to be in their mess. It's willing to listen. It's willing to be kind. It's willing to bring your whole self to a conversation. And So think of this word, young people, as you think of shepherding. Look that up in the Bible. It's in the Bible quite a bit. Shepherding what God has asked you to shepherd. He is the good shepherd, and he is the ultimate shepherd, and we need to stay connected to him. But what is God asking you to shepherd in your life? What are the relationships he's asking you to shepherd? Not just serve, shepherd. That means sometimes lead. That means sometimes follow. That means sometimes listen, sometimes share or tell. But there's a lot of opportunities that we have to shepherd. And young people, you are not the church of tomorrow. You're the church of today. So step up to the plate, shepherd where you are, what God's called you to do, and be faithful.
Wow. Be the shepherd, guys. Man. If people could reach out to you, where could they reach you?
They can reach me. You can call me on my cell phone. Can I give my number out on a
Oh, yeah.
All right, 303-908-6425. That's my cell. You can email me, kallen@yfcdenver.org. But would love to hear if you have any thoughts. I'd love to hear. I love to learn. So if there's something that's spurred in your heart that you want to reach out, text me or call me or send me an email.
Yeah, just say that I was listening to the Brick House podcast, and then
That's right.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Brick House podcast. And I've listened to a couple of the episodes. They're amazing, Matthew. I hope and pray that there's
Oh,
more
yeah.
people listening. If you haven't shared it with a friend, share it with a friend, because people need to hear these types of stories. And I think it would encourage your friends. So invite others.
Thank you. All right, guys. See you guys next week. I love you all. Have a great spring break if you're on it. All right, bye.